Okay, hi everyone. I'm John Sullivan. I teach at Muhlenberg College in the Media and Communication Department, and I'm really happy to be joined today by my colleague Jim Marcato from Cedar Crest. He also teaches in the Communication Department there, and our third partner for this collaborative project was Elizabeth Ortiz. She also teaches in Communication at Cedar Crest College. So this was kind of a unique collaboration because we have kind of a strong history of collaboration between these two departments. Indeed, way back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was a single department. As when Muhlenberg and Cedar Crest were talking about merging into a single institution, but that's kind of a long story with a long history. That did not end up happening, but what we got out of it was two very strong departments that share a lot of orientation to the study of media and communication. So this was a great opportunity for us to pool our resources to begin to teach some of the courses that we teach together on separate campuses, but kind of draw them together and to bring our students together in collaborative projects. So there were two courses that we used for this project. Looking back on it, doing two courses in this kind of blended format over a single year with this single grant was a lot, but I think there's a lot of similarity in what other project groups are talking about in terms of taking on what seems to be probably something that's doable before you start doing it, and then you realize it's a little bit less doable once you get into it, or realize that you can do it, but given the other time demands that you have in your other courses and your other types of time obligations that you have, suddenly it's looking a lot less likely that you'll get it done, and get it done in a way that you're really sort of happy with. So one of the things that we'll talk about later is doing our video presentations and our online materials. I'm convinced that they could be much, much better. And I think going back to those materials and redoing them with knowing what I know now, I can make them much better. But that's an extra added time investment that I won't have time for until the summer. So, but we had two courses, one called Media Literacy, just a slight title change at Muhlenberg, but I co-taught that course with Elizabeth Ortiz last fall. And this spring, Jim and I are co-teaching a course called Media Industries, and these courses share syllabi. They share a space online, and the students engage in collaborative activities with one another. And that was one of the main points that we wanted to do with the grant, was to try and encourage our students to collaborate with one another in an online space. Even though Muhlenberg and Cedar Crest are maybe a mile apart, if that, 0.6 miles, 0.7 miles, it is actually rare for Muhlenberg students to take Cedar Crest courses and vice versa. I don't know why that is, but this was one of those kind of weird things that we're trying to get over with this course. So the overall goal of the courses was to address some kind of core ideas within media and communication, look at political economy of media industries and how it shapes content, social values, ideologies, and social structures. But it was an ideal way to kind of leverage communication technologies in order to teach these skills to students. So this was maybe one of the more traditional collaborations in this particular go-round of the Teagle grant, because ours was a totally teaching collaboration. So it was just geared towards teaching courses that were pre-existing at both campuses. So in my other version of the slides, I had a whole bunch of blend learning goals. I think I mistakenly sent you like my first draft instead of the last draft, but there were a bunch of other learning goals here. But one was developing the cross-campus collaboration, but another was kind of like getting students to become media producers.
I think they fly in, actually,
yeah, they
when
fly
I flip
in.
through
Okay.
it. Oh, nope, I'm
As
sorry.
I said, I think I gave you the wrong one. Anyway.
She didn't like your other goals.
So, even this one goal is difficult to achieve. But we wanted cross-campus collaboration. We wanted students to be versatile in digital tools, not just as consumers, but as producers. And we wanted to test the ground of some of these online pedagogies and do some assessment about how well our students did with those versus our face-to-face pedagogies, to see if they were more engaged, involved, and if so, how. So we generally adopted a kind of flipped schedule for this. So we have, both of our courses are 2 days a week, and traditionally the first day of the week was when we had traditional class lectures or group collaborations, presentations. We had debate about some of the material that was online. And then on the second day of the week, sometimes it's Thursdays, last semester it was Wednesdays and Thursdays, I'll get to that in a second. That's when students were meant to be active online. That's where they did online activities that checked their understanding of the class material. They went beyond the class material by doing interactive activities online, not just quizzes, but discussion posts and groups, and to try and get them to collaborate on short projects with one another online and respond to one another in the online space. So those were activities were both student and instructor led. And I can say more about those if we have questions about that. The big advantage of this project, which I gather other projects struggled with, is finding a singular environment where all of this material could live online and that all of our students could access easily. We were lucky enough that Muhlenberg had an instance of Moodle that had been installed on a server at Muhlenberg, and so it was therefore completely under our control. And we allowed both Cedar Crest and Muhlenberg email addresses to be able to create accounts on that Moodle server. So for all intents and purposes, we had a singular learning management system environment, which was an enormous help. Going forward, we won't have that because Moodle is going to be dismantled this summer because Muhlenberg has moved to Canvas or is moving to Canvas. But it's our hope that with multiple campuses in the Elvea Consortium moving to Canvas as an LMS environment, that we'll be able to manage that in a different way going forward. And many of our IT staff are here to, shake heads or think I'm crazy something. So what I thought it would be helpful for this session, rather than going through the specifics of what we actually did and the assignments we did and things like that, is to talk a little bit about what we learned, because that's probably going to be of most use to the people who are starting out in this process for next year. And I kind of grouped these into sections. So we're almost midway through, of course, the second course, but we've got one course under our belts. I'm the constant for both courses. I'm teaching both courses in the fall and the spring, so I'm the carryover from both semesters. So we did some assessment after, Elizabeth Ortiz and I did some assessment after last semester. We had a fairly detailed online survey that we constructed that had both quantitative and qualitative aspects to it, and we'll use the same survey this semester once we're complete with our course. So what we learned, and I'll kind of group these into categories here. So the first is kind of like the economic and opportunity costs of blended learning. As I said, Moodle was a great resource for us because it allowed students to share information easily. But as far as the collaborations, the online collaborations, you know that group work is difficult even within a classroom situation. We thought that the online settings would actually make group collaborations even easier, but in fact, students needed even more direction about what to do in the online environment. We wanted them to actually gather materials and find a central place to store and access and share those materials and to comment on those materials. And we had originally thought that a great tool that I use and that lots of people use called Evernote would be a great tool for us. Turns out that that was actually pretty costly. But then through our discussions with Farah, we realized that, hey, OneNote, which is a Microsoft tool, is something that both of our campuses have accessible to them because it's something we are both Microsoft campuses. I think almost every campus in Elvea is a Microsoft campus. So it made this collaborative tool accessible to everyone on both campuses. So it was a great tool for us to use. But the reality was, so we trained them on OneNote last semester, and we showed them how to use it, and we kind of tracked them, and they used it for a little bit, and then they kind of abandoned it. And they went back to the tools that they had been using, which are not as feature-rich as OneNote, but I found that my students continually went back to Google Docs. It was something that they've been using a lot, and they simply defaulted back to that. And so this semester, we're kind of like giving in and saying, okay, well, if you guys really want to use Google Docs, you can use Google Docs, that's fine. So that's one interesting. So students definitely have They have their preferences about technology, and while they are savvy about some aspects of technology, they are pretty novice in other aspects of technology. Student involvement and preparation, and here I'll also solicit some comments from my colleague, Jim Ricardo as well. But we encountered some interesting challenges with student involvement and preparation. So the fact that things were online and the pace of online information meant that when we posted things for students to do online, they expected that we would give them feedback almost immediately about that online activity, even though, so it wasn't the same as if they hand you in a paper, they probably don't expect to see comments on that paper for a week or so, some cases even longer. But here they expected almost immediate feedback, and if they didn't get that, they began to disengage from the environment, so the need for constant vigilance about their online activity. A lot of students were not prepared for the level of motivation that they needed in order to succeed in a blended course. Even though we warned them about it, we gave them a pep talk about it, we continually encouraged them to use the online space. The need to continually go back and look at the online space. They treated the online space as a syllabus. You look at it once, and then you figure out what to do for the class. The fact that the online space was continually evolving over the course of the semester left many students disoriented, and they felt that we were trying to give them extra work, when in fact the work evolves over time and is in fact present, kind of changes according to what they give us. So that was a struggle. A lot of the video lectures that I did and that my colleagues did were on the longish side. We're trying to address that this semester, but again, that was a struggle. And we've also found that students were less likely to seek out our assistance even if they needed it, and to not be able to be that aware about whether they needed assistance until it was later on this semester. And then they realized by going online, finally, how far behind they were in how the course was progressing. Do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, I think with our students that we noticed that no matter how many times we said, you have to stay out, you have to stay out, they are given a lot of rope in the sense that 1 out of 2 classes per week, they don't have to come in and see you. So they just, they took that, and unfortunately, and no matter what we did, we have little checklists for every week, and so we can check to see when they check off each of the assignments, they can check it off whether they've done it or not. You're not absolutely sure. And what I really noticed is that in these courses like media industry, media literacy, we want them to see a lot of media. We want them to have examples of the things that we're trying to teach them so that they can critique content. So the wonderful side of this was that you had the entire internet to pull things together, or clips from a documentary, YouTube clip, might be an article from a UK paper, whatever it might be. You could find it and say, look at all this material that you can study. And unless, again, you build something into that to make sure that they do it, they won't. So what we've been talking about is there's services like Zaption that will take a video and that you can, within the video, have it stop, say after 10 minutes, and then have them take a quiz about what they just saw, or get some feedback about what they saw. So finding interactive elements, no matter what they're doing throughout that lesson that week, is really important. The other thing, really briefly, I have to say, having never used any software to tape myself and tape a lecture, I realized that, students give you positive feedback and energy when you speak to them in person. And I didn't realize how much I depended on that. It let me know what they needed more clarity on, or just to give me motivation. Sometimes even when they're really dead, you want to pump yourself up even more. You have more energy the lower they are. But in this case, what they're doing basically, in an A-class situation environment, I just have to be about as good as, almost as good as all the teachers they've had. But my video presentations, they've got all of YouTube to compare to. So, just slides and me talking, even for 20 minutes is a burden, I think, for some of them. So John mentioned this, finding some way to make that better. John's really quite good at it. My first time I did it, it was a 25-minute video, and you can figure this out. I had 102 edits for ums. Most of them I had no idea how often I used at least. And staring at a screen is tough to stay engaged and make it seem as if you're engaged. So there's challenges like that, but I think we're talking about ways to overcome.
I'll just read you a couple of, so from the qualitative survey, part of the survey that we did last semester, here's what some students liked. I liked we didn't have classes sometimes, and new and exciting technology, being able to sleep in, not having to go to class, allowed me to check in with other students. So they enjoyed the different modality, but when we asked them what they didn't like or things that were challenges for them, technological challenges, sometimes I had trouble getting things to load or download for a specific project or assignment. That was challenging to students, and if it didn't work right away, students abandoned it and didn't contact IT. They simply waited until the next class period, after which it was kind of too late because then they were already behind. Scheduling, due dates, miscommunications, not checking email. Students not checking email was actually turned into be a huge problem for us. It wasn't that students don't check email, it's just they don't check it as regularly as their professors do, meaning at least once a week, right? So this became a huge problem. So communicating with our students, email has ceased to become an effective means of communicating with our students, and that's a huge barrier to having a successful blended class, we found. The other thing we found is that last semester we had half of the courses were blended, and in order to provide more of a safety net for our students, we ramped that down this semester. So now we have about 33% of the course is in an online format, and then 66% is not. And so we're seeing if that balance or mixture works better for our students than a 50-50, which left a lot of our students flailing at certain points during the semester. Just other logistical challenges that would never have occurred to us at the outset. For the fall semester, Muhlenberg and Cedar Crest had different academic calendars that did not match. Cedar Crest started a week before our class, which we figured out 2 weeks before the start of the semester. So that was challenging. Cedar Crest and Muhlenberg also have very few overlapping time blocks, which makes synchronous online learning very challenging. And I suspect that's the case across LVA as well. This spring, Jim and I are negotiating the fact that even though we're teaching the same course with the same syllabus, my course is an upper division course, his course is an introductory course. It's a 100 versus a 300 level course, so we're just negotiating that. And the cross-campus group work has been the most challenging aspect for this. We thought the most challenging aspect was going to be the technological aspect of it, and it's not. It's the logistical, it's the encouraging students to engage with one another. And one of the things we did not do with this particular course is talk about ways in which to leverage social media to engage with our students. But I would recommend that looking backward, we thought email and the LMS would do it. That may be something that people should look at very carefully. So just a little bit, and good luck.
Questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Carrie does.
My last one.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not doing it here. They said they weren't checking their email. Like, what?
Yeah.
So how'd you solve the problem?
Well, this semester is less of a problem because we see them more often in class, and so we give them more of those pushes to do that. But it's a pervasive problem. Students not checking email or not reading email carefully. I suspect they do check their email, but my suspicion is that they get so many that they have no way of properly filtering their email. So to me, part of like information literacy for our students should be teaching them ways to properly filter their email such that they can bracket out those emails that are more important that they need to deal with. So they're dealing with the same kind of information overload that we are with our emails. But I think because it's so central to our jobs, we've found ways of filtering them to make sure we don't miss important emails. And I don't think that students have adopted those filtering techniques, whether technological or otherwise. So I think in any email system we adopt, or Muhlenberg is considering new email systems, there ought to be some strategies built in to help students narrow down and filter emails, because I suspect that's part of the problem.
So what were the biggest gains for the students from the blended part of the?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So that's one of the things we're going to be writing about. So the biggest gains for the students were the ability to chat with one another, engage with one another in those cases where they did engage and collaborate. So that part of the experiment was successful. And I think we got a lot more, it's having carryover effects in offline ways. So more Cedar Crest students are now enrolling in Muhlenberg classes, and we're starting to see some carryover vice versa. So they realize that there's another campus that's less than a mile away from them suddenly, and now there's an interest. So it's had some offline effects, but it's also gotten students more into learning new technology tools. And that's one thing I would also kind of say as a recommendation, is that I'm so fascinated by all these technology tools, and if I could use 5 or 6 or 7 of them in a class, I would. I find that there's an upper level threshold to the number of tools that a student can learn. So if there's maybe 1 or 2 main tools that you're using for your class or for your project, don't go beyond that, because then you spend most of your time teaching students the tools rather than leveraging them to explore the content you want them to explore. If that makes sense.
A quick question. How do you process the grading, like the Moodle associated with the grade center? You do grading twice. Right?
How do I?
Do you have your this platform you use for this project, right? The Moodle.
Yes.
But at your school, do you have a Blackboard or website for your?
We do, but we're only using Moodle for this course.
Okay.
So we don't have multiple sites going on.
Okay.
Right, and they upload their work there, and we're able to grade their work there and provide the grade book and everything like that. So that's all integrated.
So the grade book also shared?
Yes, everything's shared, yep. Yep, but ultimately what we did do to deal with another student concern was that we actually bracketed them out and told students that Cedar Crest colleagues would be grading the Cedar Crest students and I would be grading the Muhlenberg students, because that caused an enormous amount of consternation. That someone not on their campus was going to be grading them for their work, even though it was a shared course.
Just wanted to add something else that I think students got out of it. My class is an introductory class, and to be able to set up a synchronous experience so they can watch students who are upper level students give a presentation that they're going to need to do later in the semester, I think that was really terrific. The indirect also of seeing what my colleague does and what he emphasizes in this class, I think it's made the class for me that much more interesting and better. And so indirectly, I'm sure it's
Yeah, it's made our collaboration as colleagues, I think, much stronger. So there are benefits not just for students, but for faculty and faculty as well.
Do you ever bring the classes together where all the students see each other and touch each other?
That has been logistically complicated because of the complicated logistics of that. And the answer is no. But that's another recommendation. If there is an opportunity to do that early in the semester, whereby students can see one another before they interact with each other online, having online-only interactions, it does not foster the kind of, which looking back, we probably should have expected that, but we didn't. So there's only so much you can do with an online environment.
Yeah, I did do that once. I was doing something with someone here at the sales, and we actually did meet. We had to do it at night because there's just no other time.
Right.
And I think one of us had to get a bus to do it, so
Yes.
logistically it gets kind of costly and things like that. But it was good. We had, the warming up session.
And that I think would work much better than what we did.
I just want to follow up with that email question. So, like our students have the same problem. If I send email out and they don't respond, and then I discover if I send something to the phone, they look at it immediately. So that's why, like in the Chinese language program at Lafayette, we adopted the WeChat group. I don't know if you have heard about it. WeChat is the most popular social media platform in China. Is catching up all over the world. We're using creating like a WeChat group for each class. And if I have something, I send it, they will just respond like right away, even if it's at midnight.
Because they receive it like a text message as opposed to an email.
Yeah.
See?
So I mean, that's just
Yes. So that's, if they have this set up correctly, that they can set it up differently. So the student has to set that up, it's not automatic. But yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Yeah, but if the students, if we could text the students rather than emailing them, we might get a better response.
Me.
Read your email.
Yeah.
Thank you.